In Afghanistan, a drone flies over a small village and gets the attention of the locals, who immediately get ready for an attack. Soon a bunch of American soldiers arrive and find the town empty because everyone is hiding. Inside, the team keeps moving, and when they find a suspicious man with a bomb, they immediately surround him, threatening to shoot him if he doesn't drop his weapon. At first the man tries to ignore the threat, but when he sees the soldiers mean it, he takes out a gun which forces the soldiers to instantly kill him with a few shots. Then Jake informs Colonel Mason about the dead man and the bomb, asking for permission to disarm it. Mason refuses, but Jake ignores him and works on it anyway, and successfully. Disarming it. That moment, a secret second bomb goes off and kills most of the soldiers. Soon the men come out of the buildings and surround the Americans as they open fire and a vicious gunfight begins. American soldiers are falling everywhere and only Jake and Mason are left alive. Jake runs to join his colonel and is almost shot by the enemy, but Mason saves his life right before a helicopter shows up. 5 years later, Jake is trying his best to deal with a new life as a civilian while taking medicine for his PTSD. His new job is at an auto shop owned by Earl, where he has to work extra hard to deal with some entitled clients. After work, Jake goes home to spend his time with his family. He always makes sure to keep a happy mood for his son, but in private, things get tense when his wife points out they have lots of unpaid bills. However, Jake promises to take care of it like he always does. When Jake puts his son to bed, he shares a picture and a story about his old squad and the fact Mason was at the hospital when the baby was born. Jake laments not having spoken to Mason in a while, and when the kid asks if he ever killed anybody, Jake dodges the question. The next day, Jake goes to work and finds a group of gangsters claiming that Earl owes them money. When Jake tries to kick them out, the leader Fresh sends his men to beat him up, but Jake easily defeats them all with a wrench. Fresh makes him stop by showing him his gun, then he leaves with his gang after promising a round 2 in the future. Afterward, Jake confronts Earl, who confesses he used to be part of a gang too but was fortunate enough to leave that life and build something he could call a home. Earl promises he'll always protect his block, so Jake doesn't need to worry about his family. Jake feels like he's still at war and calls his family to check on them, hearing his wife say he should have called the cops instead of getting involved. Later in the evening, Jake goes home and sees Fresh in his car mentioning payback before driving away. A panicking Jake rushes inside the house and is devastated to discover his family is dead, so he screams and cries as he has a total breakdown. Moments later, the police arrive and try to ask him some questions, but Jake snaps and goes away in his truck. He drives through the city looking for Fresh's car while his mind keeps going through his happiest family memories. Eventually he finds the car outside a naughty club, so Jake rushes inside with a gun in hand and begins shooting every single gang member without hesitation. When he's about to kill Fresh, the man explains that he hadn't meant to kill Jake's family but he was given no choice. This doesn't change Jake's mind and Fresh gets shot too. 5 months later, Jake is serving time in prison for his crime and his PTSD gets worse as he spends most of his day picturing Fresh killing his family. One day, Jake is surprised to get a visit from Mason, who offers his help to reopen the case. However, Jake refuses because he thinks he belongs there and repeats what he told the judge. He got his revenge and now has zero remorse. He'd even do it again. Then Jake asks Mason to never come back and tells the guard to take him back to his cell. That night, Jake keeps remembering his days with the army and how Mason had retired after saving his life. Sometime later, Jake is visited by a stranger named Ramsey, who mentions he runs a private task force. However, Jake doesn't let him say more and once again asks the guard to take him back. Later in the evening, Jake is dreaming about his family when suddenly, a bunch of masked men break into his cell and sedate him before kidnapping him. When Jake wakes up later, he finds himself out of prison and discovers his kidnapper is Ramsey, who confesses he's been watching Jake for a long time and is impressed by his record. Ramsey's organization, called Section 8, doesn't play by the rules, and Ramsey thinks they can give Jake back his purpose. As a final touch, Ramsey says Jake's son would like to see him as a hero, not a convict, so Jake finally accepts to join. Later in Washington, D.C., Ramsey introduces Jake to the rest of the team, Elias, Ajax, Brunner, and Mueller. Then he gives him a tour of what he calls the Batcave while explaining that they have 8 operatives in Washington and 8 elsewhere in the world. Their orders come from the State Department and the NSA, always related to taking care of threats against national security. Since Jake is just starting, Mueller will be his watcher and go with him to all missions until he gains seniority. Jake will also be given a bank account, an apartment in the city, a vehicle, a backstory, and an alias because to the world he's dead. Then Ramsey has to leave, so it's up to the team to put Jake through the initiation process. Ajax starts to provoke him, pushing him around and throwing some punches. Jake refuses to fight and does his best to dodge them all, but Ajax becomes so aggressive that he makes Jake snap. He pushes Ajax to the floor and almost stabs him in the eye with a pen, but suddenly a memory of his family flashes in his mind and he calms down. Then Jake leaves, and a frustrated Ajax points out that Jake has shown fear and that means he doesn't belong with them, but Mueller disagrees. Sometime later, Jake and Mueller get on a plane and discuss Jake's first mission. The target is a man called Castillo, a defense contractor that also works as a weapon dealer. Recently he's put his hands on some dangerous schematics that he'll sell to the Russians, so Jake's job is to retrieve the schematics and kill Castillo and his men. Jake realizes they're essentially a group of assassins and doesn't look forward to killing again. In the evening, the duo makes it to Mexico, where they find Castillo about to make the exchange with a Russian negotiator in a warehouse. While Castillo and the Russian argue, Jake sneaks around and discreetly kills a guard. The noise makes both gangs think the other is setting them up, and this turns them against each other, so their argument soon escalates into a full gunfight. The gang members begin dying one by one and even make a car explode, which causes the fight to finally stop. Then Jake comes out and kills every survivor before looking inside the car, where there are two very scared women. Jake ignores them and takes the schematics before leaving. Later at the base, Ramsey scolds Jake for compromising the integrity of their mission by leaving those two women alive. Jake tries to explain they were victims and accuses Ramsey of disregarding human life, so Ramsey threatens to send him back to prison if he doesn't obey. Then Jake is dismissed, and Mueller tells Ramsey that Jake did good, but Ramsey is still hesitant, so Ajax cuts in and implies that Ramsey made a mistake. Once he's left alone, Ramsey calls someone named Locke. The next day in Nevada, mercenary Locke breaks into a hotel and kills a few employees before entering a room, where he scares away the women before confronting his victim. The guy knows Ramsey sent Locke and tries to bribe him with a huge amount of money, but Locke kills him anyway. Afterward, Locke escapes through the hotel's casino, but the guards immediately get suspicious and go after him. Locke easily beats up every guard that comes close and begins running, breaking things on the way and knocking out the guards that keep coming. Eventually he takes out his gun and shoots a few bullets just to cause panic in the gambling crowd. He also kills a guard before going outside and stealing a car to escape. Meanwhile, Jake moves into the new house and is shocked to find a frame with a bunch of pictures from his time in Afghanistan.